Okay, so you've gotten comfortable with Canopy, you've gotten comfortable with IPython notebooks, and you've also started to get the idea of using variables. Now you're starting to wonder, great, how can I use all of this to start learning some more about language? Well, in this video we're going to start learning how to use Python to count elements in a text. So last time we saw how we can define variables as strings, like this. But there's really no reason to limit ourselves to just defining variables as single words. So let's take a look at something a little bit more interesting. So let's imagine for a moment that there is a linguistics professor who comes up with an example sentence, something like this. And of course we already know that we can use the print command to display the contents of our variable. But this is maybe not all that exciting really. So instead let's use the len, or length, command to find out what the length of the string is. We type print the length of the contents of the variable L1, L1 being our first linguistics professor, and Python returns the number of characters in the string, 30. Now we've already seen that we can use Python to compare things, to compare variables, so let's compare two example sentences. Perhaps there's another linguistics professor, L2, who makes up an example sentence about coffee. And by now we should really have all the tools we need to use Python code to find out which of these two example sentences is longer. So that's pretty cool. Python returns 30 and 53, and we know that 53 is larger than 30, so we can see that the second sentence has more characters in it than the first sentence. Of course, we could see that anyway just by looking at the sentences, but there might be some situations in which we would like to have Python do this comparison for us automatically. Maybe if we want to make lots and lots of comparisons. So instead of just having Python print the answer to the screen, let's have it store the answer inside a variable. So now when we run this script, Python is going to define two new variables for us, the number of characters in Linguist 1's sentence and the number of characters in Linguist 2's sentence. And not only that, but we can use a relational operator like greater than to ask Python to make a comparison between these new variables and do the heavy lifting and hard work of figuring out whether 30 or 53 is the larger number. So of course, as you remember, you can use comment syntax to put little comments or reminders to yourself or other people who might be reading your code directly into the code. But in IPython notebooks, you can also use these markdown cells to add markdown formatted information. So let's just put a few of those in to remind ourselves of what the different parts of our script are doing. Okay, so that's great. We can count the number of characters in a string, and that could potentially be useful. But for our purposes, it might actually be more useful to be able to count the number of words in a string. So let's see how we can use Python to do that. This turns out to be a really trivial task in Python. All we need to do is start by defining a new variable. Here we'll call it words underscore L1, just being shorthand for the words of Linguist 1. And then we're going to take that same variable that we defined above, L1, which is what Linguist 1 used as his example sentence. And then we're going to use this split syntax. And hey presto, now instead of a string with Linguist 1's example sentence, we now have a list of strings. And that list is a list of all the words in Linguist 1's sentence. And if we can do this for Linguist 1, then it should be no problem to do the same thing for Linguist 2. So let's just do that. And there we go. 2 sentences and 2 lists of words. So by now you actually have quite a few tools at your disposal. You can create variables that contain strings, and you can measure the length of those strings in terms of number of characters. And you can compare the lengths of 2 strings. And you also now know how to take a string and divide it into a list of words. So now it's going to be your turn to give this a try. Try creating some string variables of your own, and then comparing the number of words in 2 strings. Now, I have not shown you exactly how to do this, but I have shown you all the tools that you need to figure it out. So go ahead and play around a little bit and see if you can measure the difference between two sentences in terms of number of words. There's a little typo there. I can just go back and fix that up. Finally, and since you're going to be creating your own scripts now, it's worth pointing out that you can also save your work in Canopy. Just choose whatever folder you like on your computer to save your IPython notebook files in. And then you can always get back to them again later.